Hello and a warm welcome back to the Diary of a Medium Stories from the Spirit World podcast. If you are new here, I am Em Stabisky, a psychic medium and spiritual mentor, and I guess founder of the Modern Mediumship Academy. Now, today I want to talk about my very first experience with a ghost. So this was an experience that I had, or I guess which at this particular time when I was young, I believed was a ghost, and how this really shaped what I felt about the spirit world and my path moving forward. So today I am going to share with you the very first time that I experienced a ghost visit. Now, this visit was something that then led me to close down my abilities. And obviously, I didn't know this at the time because I was so scared of the concept of a ghost coming to see me that to be honest, it scared the absolute living daylights out of me. And I know that a lot of you listening will resonate with stories similar to this in your journey, because if you're here, we know that you're already on that pathway and have probably at some point in your life had a scary experience which has led you to then shut down your spiritual abilities. Okay, so let's get into it. So I'm going to set the scene for you. I was 16 years old. I was visiting with my dad in Germany, as I shared on a previous podcast. This is where he lived kind of most of my life growing up. And we were in their family home in Germany. And to be honest, at that point in time, like 16, I don't really recall having any experiences that stand out to me, like apart from being an imaginary friend when I was young and that sort of thing. There was nothing prior to that had led me to believe anything about the spirit world, I suppose. When I look back, I was intrigued, like I was curious, certainly about celebrity mediums, as I've, shared before, John Edward, Lisa Williams. We didn't have any, internet back then, right? So we had to actually just watch TV. And I used to really love the weekly shows that they had on. So I was kind of in the curious space, but that's all really. There was nothing in my family. There wasn't anyone that I knew in my ancestry or grandparents that kind of had any sort of gifts or abilities. So it wasn't really in my awareness, if that makes sense. So in Germany, where my dad's house was, in this village, and in a lot of European places and houses, right, they have the loft space becomes like a bedroom or an area, like people have it for play areas, but it's a used area in the loft of the houses. And in this particular house that they lived in, the loft space was made, I guess, into like a little bedroom or a little kind of, probably not even a granny flat, but a little self-contained area. It had the big old wooden roofs, kind of pitch roofs. That's the word I was looking for, like the pitch roofs. And this was the second house that they lived in. So when I went to stay there, generally I would live or sleep up in that area when I went to stay. And I'd never had any weird feeling about this at all. The only thing that was actually a little bit weird was that they had a German Shepherd dog. And this dog would only go to the first level of the house. It absolutely would never go up the second set of stairs, which was interesting. But I didn't, again, 16, I wasn't really thinking anything weird or strange at that particular time. My dad used to just say, it's just, the daft dog doesn't want to go up there. So I was like, I never really thought about it. So setting the scene, they weren't really old houses, but they certainly weren't modern houses, and they were out in the countryside. This particular house, they hadn't lived in that long. So this one night I had gone to bed and I had just been, I guess, on like the cusps of sleep, and I'd fallen asleep, and I actually woke up at it was probably around about 3 o'clock in the morning. I remember feeling like I was asleep, but I had this feeling of awareness that there was possibly someone in the room. And I remember kind of sort of doing the whole, duvet doing a thing where you pull it kind of down a little bit, and had to have like a look, like is there something wrong? Like, has my dad came into the room? Like, was something happening? And as I did that and opened my eyes, there was actually a young girl standing beside my bed. Now, as you can imagine, I was absolutely terrified. A, because I knew she wasn't real, and B, she was literally in my bedroom, and C, she was actually between me and the door, so there was kind of like no escaping that room. And as she was standing there, I almost would describe her as having maybe like Victorian style dress on, like the really old night dresses was kind of what I remembered her. She looked kind of hazy, almost like a grey figurine. And I remember like taking in what she looked like. She had this beautiful long curly hair, very sweet looking. She definitely wasn't scary looking, but I was scared. And it was almost like when I recall the images that came to me at that particular time, it's almost like there was like a wind machine just on her, like her hair was just gently going, sort of almost in a breeze. And she didn't speak to me, like we didn't have any dialect. I was absolutely scared to my bejeebies, and I pulled the a duvet, we say doona here in Australia, duvet, over my head, and I literally was physically shaking. So I was underneath the duvet, I was physically shaking my whole body, I was sweating, I was crying, like I was actually quite distressed. My immediate reaction was sort of fear, confusion, like who is she, like what is she doing here? But I had no doubt in that moment in time that this was a ghost. And that's how I seen her. I seen her to be a ghost, because really my only experiences of that was television. It was movies, right? I'm trying to think of the word. It was movies, those old movies that we used to watch. And I actually used to watch a lot of like horror movies actually at my nana's house when I used to sleep over. I don't actually know if my mom knows that, but she used to put like Frankenstein and all this stuff on, like Friday Night Fear, when I used to sleep over at her house. And so that probably didn't help the situation, that literally here I was 16 and there was a ghost in my bedroom. Like, it didn't really occur to me at that particular time that if I pulled the covers back down, she would probably be gone. Like, it would be like immediately she would disappear. Like, my logical brain didn't really think about that in that particular moment, because looking back now, I was so frozen in the fear of actually seeing her in my bedroom. So what unfolded after that was that I actually did just stay under that duvet until the sun came up, which was probably around about 3 hours later. And so it wasn't until then that I actually had the courage to come out from under the duvet and have a look around. Of course, she wasn't there, she was gone, but it was enough to scare me enough to know that I could never sleep in that bedroom again. And I remember thinking, well, why did I stay there? Like, why did I stay under the duvet for that length of time and not look out? But I remember distinctly that when I opened my eyes and looked to my left and she was there, that she was actually between me and the door. So I was actually really scared to try and leave, because she was a barrier between, I guess, me and the door. So, nope, I just stayed there under, like, literally, I can't even remember the thoughts that went through my head, but all I just remember was that, like, I wanted to get out of the room, but I was just so scared that I was just really stuck there. So when I did, eventually, the sun came up, I left the room, and I went downstairs, and strangely enough, I started to clean. I don't even know why that happened, but I remember having all of this kind of pent up energy, and I started to clean the kitchen in their house. Obviously, like, everyone else was asleep, and I just started cleaning in the kitchen. So literally, I was like washing all the dishes, wiping around, I was mopping floors. You know, when you need to get rid of that, like, energy, it's almost like I do that now. Like, when I've got like the pent of energy, or if I'm in that activated state, then I start to, like, clean up. It's not a bad thing sometimes, right? So I remember doing all that, and it was round about an hour later, around about 7 o'clock, my stepmom came down into the kitchen area, and she was like, what on earth, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're creating, or you're causing all this noise. What have you been doing? She was not happy. She was really quite annoyed. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm cleaning. What do you mean? And she was like, you've been banging around up there and all of this stuff. And I didn't understand what she was talking about. And she said, I banged on the ceiling to tell you to shut up. And I said, like, half an hour ago. And I just looked at her and I was like, I've been down here for the past hour. Like, I have not been in the loft. I wasn't there. And she was saying, yes, you were banging everything around. It woke me up. And I just looked at her and I was like, that was not me. And then I began to tell her the story of what had literally happened. So I don't know. And listen, I never even really got to the bottom of what was going on with that. What was that about? The fact that she had been woken up by this banging from obviously above, which was where I was sleeping, and I was actually downstairs in the kitchen. Yeah, that house was never the same again to me. I have to be honest. I never felt the same in that house again. And what I then realized, and I guess that I didn't know this at the time, but now going on the journey that I've been on to get where I am now, like, the things that I realized is that we are conditioned, I guess, to believe that ghosts they're frightening, maybe they've got bad energy, they're a threat even, possibly. That was my early spiritual experiences, and that mainly came from watching movies like The Sixth Sense and probably the horror movies that I shouldn't have probably watched, where Frankenstein and people come back to life and all of that stuff. Maybe I shouldn't have gone there. The Amityville horror, that stuff like rings a bell, but I was quite into that stuff when I was a teenager. Go figure. But what I guess I didn't realize is, like, I thought that the ghosts, they're visiting you because it's bad, like, so they're going to do something to you. And that was my experience. So inadvertently, when that happened to me and I had that experience, and I know many people relate to this, right? I actually ended up closing off my abilities. I shut them down. Inadvertently, I was so frozen in that moment when that experience happened to me that I shut down any other experiences in order to protect myself from the spirit world, from ghosts, from things actually finding me, I suppose. And if this has happened to you and you have an experience of knowing that you have now closed down your connection to the spirit world, I just want you to know, as I have, you can reopen that, you can reconnect and even deepen your connection later, because you have the ability to work through the misunderstandings and understand, that spirit are here to support us. Like, really, do we believe in ghosts? Like, I do believe that there can be residual energy of people that do reside in some places, like when you get haunted houses or like haunted theaters or that kind of thing, like a residual energy. But that's actually different to your loved one in spirit, them visiting you, then sending you signs and contacting you. Your loved ones, your family, they're with you, right? They're not in a place, they're not somewhere. Like this particular young girl that came to visit me, I truly believe that she wasn't with me. She's not one of my loved ones or guides or anything like that. She was connected, I believe, to the history of that particular house. And I suppose in what I experienced moving through my life with the different weird and wonderful things that have happened to me through my life, and those kind of experiences that I had, even though I did shut down my connection with the spirit world, that's what sort of led me to believe that other things that happened to me, that I would make sense of them, or I would find a logical reason of why this might have happened to me. Or I would share it with someone and they'd be like, oh yeah, but this, or oh yeah, but that. Some of these stories I'm going to share here, so I don't want to talk about that too much in this particular episode. But what I started to do was experiences that I had, I started to find logical explanations for those experiences. I would be things like when I would have I'll share an example with you, I suppose, is if I had like an awareness of like someone moving in my mind's eye, sometimes you get that feeling where it's like almost like someone just passed you. And because I wear glasses, I would just think, oh, it's just the arm of my glasses. I'm just catching that out of the corner of my eye, right? But then it would happen to me when I wasn't wearing glasses. So I think that shutdown for me was more about, it didn't stop the experiences, although it did for quite some time. The next experience after 16 for me was around about 31. So there was a period of time where that definitely was for me completely shut down. And at 31, when I was pregnant with my first daughter, was when I believed that my abilities then came or started to come back online. But I think because of that experience, unconsciously, when I started to have these other things that was happening, I was making logical sense of them. So to some degree, I still had that shut down. So I know that you're listening to this and thinking, oh my God, this has happened to me. Like, I know that I can now pinpoint when I shut down my abilities. It can even be things like, it's not necessarily that kind of visit. It can be a parent or something shutting you down, saying you're making it up, stop talking about that, that's the devil's work, or whatever it is that you want to say. But often it's something external to us that then shuts down those abilities, and we do that to create sort of safety. And when I look back on that younger me, like, she didn't have access to the internet. She couldn't just go and Google or chat GPT and ask, hey, I've just had this experience, what is it? In them times, it was books, it was going to the library, it was reading things about this kind of thing. And the only experience that you did have was on TV, showing my age now, right? So now it's a lot more easier and accessible to understand some of these experiences that might happen. And if I had that ability then to be able to kind of look at that a little bit more, then maybe I wouldn't have closed it down for so long. But I also trust that my journey is as it needs to be. So I did actually also later find out, after all this happened, that my stepmom had a priest to the house to actually do like a clearing and a blessing on the property because that she had experienced some things. Prior to that, my dad thought she was just a bit crazy, was what he said, but that had happened. So that was also really interesting to find out that she had that done, but there was still, I guess, activity of things happening in the house. What I want to tell you from sharing this story as well, this is what I wanted to do on this podcast, share entries into my diary. This was probably entry 1, right? When I started to actually keep a diary, I actually went back and wrote down all the experiences that had previously happened to me that had brought me to where I was. And this was actually the very first experience that I remember happening. So if you have had, I would absolutely love you to share some stories with me of your own experiences. And if you look in the show notes, I'm going to pop a link in here where you can actually type me a message, or you can do it on a document. And if it's easier, you can speak it out onto a speak to text document, and you can upload the document. And I would love to share with my listeners some of your experiences of maybe when you have shut down your spiritual abilities, or how maybe spirits guided you on your journey, how you came into your own abilities. I would really, really love to hear those. So literally drop them to me. I'm going to do a segment where I'm sharing other people's stories, and along with my own, of my journey to how I got here now. So this is my ghost story. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Diary of a Medium, Stories from the Spirit World podcast. And in this podcast, I am really just wanting to connect to you, to tell you we are all spiritual, even if you don't feel like you fit into the spiritual box. Right? We are all spiritual. We're all soul. We're all on our own journey. And I just love this space. I love to create a space where people can feel seen and heard, and take away any mysticism from being spiritual. Being spiritual looks like however you want it to look in your journey. So thank you so much for listening. If you have really enjoyed this, then please click subscribe, share with a friend, and drop me a message and let me tell your story on my podcast. Alrighty, thank you for listening. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in to Diary of a Medium, Stories from the Spirit World. If something in today's episode has sparked something within you and you are curious about your own spiritual gifts, then check out my website on how I can support you. If you have your own story to share, then please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to support me, you can subscribe, leave a review, or simply share this with a friend. So until next time, trust yourself, trust spirit, and keep listening to the whispers from the universe. Bye for now.